Well, good evening. It's another episode of Spencer Uncensored. It is 6 p.m. on the East Coast of the United States today. And I would love to know, by the way, where you're coming from. So if you're seeing this as a recording later on, feel free to drop it in the comments. Let me know, hey, I'm watching from here. I'm listening from here. Whatever, wherever you may be, I'd love to hear from you. So if you remember last week, my voice was a little rough. What's happening, Derek? Good to see you in the house. But anyway, my voice was weak last week. This week, getting a little bit better. I don't have the smooth DJ voice quite as well now. But anyway, tonight, before I get, I'm gonna share a couple things about what the progress is, what's on the docket, if you will, and then. But tonight we're gonna talk about accountability. It's probably one of the biggest topics that, as a coach, we would love to see us all as a society get better at. And I think you would probably feel the same way, because when you're operating with people that are just constantly running around as victims, it can be a little bit of a difficulty in making your job and your life and your business go the way you want it to go, or the way you'd like to move it. And so you take accountability and still make things happen. I'm just going to share with you tonight some differences so that you can tell the difference between someone who is full victim mode and someone who is actually owning their accountability. Now, keep in mind, this is just one of 5 pieces out of the book, Momentum and Mastery. We're working on that now. It's in editing. I should get tomorrow a copy, or a digital copy, so that I can go through it and make sure we're doing the final edits. And then we're going to send it out and I'm looking to have 100 people, by the way, to get on what we call the advanced reader copies. Those are advanced reader copies. Those will be digital copies that I'll send to you in exchange for an honest review. So we're going to be doing that. We're going to set all that up soon here. Really looking forward to it. The other thing, too, if you're not already on our daily text message, go over to spencercombs.com and jump on there and just fill out the information real fast. Every Monday through Friday, somewhere between, say, 6:30 to 7:30 a.m., I send Eastern time a text message that should be of value to you. Typically, we're just helping people move forward with whatever may be going on in my mind at that moment. But they typically are, momentum and mastery related. Matter of fact, I'll give you an example. Today said problems. Well, here's what I know. You're either going through one, just came out of one, or about to go into one. Your ability to succeed in business is completely dependent on your ability to move through those problems and finding solutions. Remember, this is a big remember. Problems, big problems, only happen to little people and unsupported systems. So that was just one of the texts we sent out. That was one we sent this morning. If you want to be on that, go to spencercombs.com. You can fill it out right there on the front page, and we'll get you right in there. So Monday through Friday, it's a free service. It's not something you have to pay for. In the past, I have had it as part of the actual coaching program, but this particular piece, so many people enjoyed it and so many wanted it. We just made it something that was more public for anyone that wanted to log in and get it. So moving forward, in the book, we talk about the difference between victims and champions. And so tonight, I want to share some details about victims and how they see accountability. And then we're going to talk about champions and the mindset that they carry around accountability. And if you got a pen and paper, you might want to write some of these things down, because it's always good to have some reference point to remember some of these things. The truth is that we're going to be in these we're going to swing back and forth on a regular basis, but you want to stay way more on the championship side, and you want to feed that way more often so that you actually have a champion style mindset. That's what's required to have mastery. Champion mindset is what's required for you to be able to achieve the level of qualified championship necessary for you to get where you want to go. And so this is number 3 in the pieces of the mindset: accountability. Now, let's talk about victims. The victims, I made the bold statement on a podcast not long ago, a couple of years ago, actually. Now it's about like 5 years. I was being interviewed, and I made the comment that there are no wealthy victims. If your intention is to become wealthy, I'm going to tell you right now, being a victim constantly is not going to help you become a massive, wealthy person. That's just not going to work. It's not going to happen that way. By the way, you guys have been really quiet tonight. I'm going to make sure my comments are set up. So let me know you're in the house, by the way. Feel free to drop in the comments. Hey, Dan, good to see you, bud. All right, so let's talk about this for a second. You can typically recognize victims from about 3 or 4 things that I just wrote down. Now, there's some in the book also, but I just wrote these down a few minutes ago. Blame, criticism, whining, and justifying. Those are 4 big ways to recognize. But let's break that down for a minute. How do we know someone's being a victim? Or how do I know when I'm stepping into my victim mentality? Well, let's see. Victims have what's called an external locus of control. An external locus of control is just a scientific term for you are validating externally. If you're a victim, you are getting your meaning, you are getting your value, you're getting everything necessary you're referencing from the outside. So, and I've said this to you guys before in different contexts, but if you ever have to reach for something external to fix an internal problem, that's an opportunity for growth. I'm very careful the way I say that because in some cases, true, we need a medicine to take care of something that's a physical problem. Sure, it's an outside thing. But more often than not, it's an opportunity for us to grow. Are you reaching for alcohol? Are you reaching for a drug? Are you reaching for a relationship? Are you reaching for outside validation? If so, it's a strong chance you are living in a victim mindset. Champions have an internal locus of control. They operate from within, and they make those decisions based off of what's necessary from within. Victims also focus on flaws. They look at everything around and they see anything. And you know these people, by the way. Hopefully it's not you. But they'll see anything and they'll immediately start pointing out what's wrong with that situation. Part of the problem is because they're also focused on the problem rather than the solution. If you're always focused on the problem, you're not going to necessarily come up with a solution either. So focusing on the flaws and always talking about the flaws is absolutely going to be an indicator that you're living in victimhood. Another one is they're judgmental. You know these people, don't you? Super judgmental. They're constantly referencing one thing, and it's judgmental. I don't need to go into detail with that, but you understand. They're unforgiving. I wrote down unforgiving. Victims typically are very unforgiving. They like to hold on to things, and they create a tremendous amount of bitterness by this. One of the reasons why, by the way, people do this whole victim thing is because it helps. It has worked for them in the past. What's going on, John? I see you're in the house. But victims have a habit of being unforgiven. And so they love to hold on to that bitterness because they can use it against you. And they use it for manipulation. That's a victim. That's a victim mindset. Victims also struggle with gratitude. You tell them anything, give them a compliment or something, they're going to struggle with it. They're going to downplay it or they're going to push it off. But they can't own the results they have. So with that being said, they've got to push it back. They struggle with that. Victims also self-justify. They love to explain things away. And this is where that conversation around excuses show up. You know people like this? No matter what you talk about, they give you some kind of an excuse or they manufacture a long-winded story to create some rationalization around why or what or whatever happened. This reminds me of a story. I watched a documentary not long ago about West Point. Now, if you know anything about West Point, that is the U.S. military academy for the U.S. Army. And West Point takes a lot of work to get in there. There's so many stories I can tell you about that. Let me stay on track. One of the things that they do, though, and by the way, if you've ever been to the military, been in the military academy and would love to give us your input. Feel free to drop it in the comments. I would love to hear from you. But this, and tell me how true this is. But I got this in a documentary. They said that there's a book. It's like 300 pages, if I remember, 300 something pages. And it's called the Bugle Notes. And the Bugle Notes is filled with facts, just questions and facts, questions and answers throughout the whole book. And any upperclassman can ask any lowerclassman any question out of that 300-page book. And if they cannot answer it, right, if they can't answer that question, then they're going to, if they can't answer the question, they can assign them tasks. They can make them do push-ups. They can make them do things. Now, when they were interviewing the person in charge, whoever this guy is, right, running the school, about this practice that's been going on for a couple centuries now, he explained it this way. He said, listen, we're raising leaders here. We're training leaders. And you would think that the reason we do it this way is because we're training them to be able to spit out facts, and it's also kind of a hazing situation. But the truth is that it's not. It's not an ego check. What it is we are training these young soldiers, these young leaders, to come into the military. And when an higher rank asks you a question, you don't give them the entire story that goes along with the answer. You just give them the answer. His example was, if we're in the middle of a firefight and I need to know how much ammunition is on that hill over there, then I need to know how much ammunition is on that hill, not the story around why there's only this much or why there's more than enough or whatever. I just want to know how much ammunition is on that hill. Listen, if you want to be a business leader, you cannot be a victim. And victims have a very hard time with being succinct and not rationalizing. They want to rationalize, they want to tell the story, right? I ask people all the time, how many appointments have you had this past week? Well, this past week I got sick, and this past week I did this, and they immediately go into the story instead of just giving me the numbers. Friends, if you want to have a championship level of mindset, you cannot constantly just talk about your rationalizations. Quit with the story, okay? It's not helping you get anywhere. It doesn't help in communication. And it causes you to get even more embedded in whatever negativity bias you've got going on. The only other thing I wrote down here is that victims are also defensive by nature. You ask them questions, they'll immediately start, and if you start putting a little pressure on them, that's why a lot of people that are victims by nature don't do well with coaching. Because coaching is going to be a situation where we require some level of ownership about what you're doing and how it's coming out, regardless of the results. Because if you're looking for solutions, then you've got a championship mindset. Let's talk about those. I wrote down several. These are not in the book. Some of these are in there's pieces of it in the book with owning your results and responding to missteps and communication and proactiveness. All that's here in the book. But here's some very specific things that I just wrote down earlier about having a championship mindset. I could, just write down all the things about the victims that we just talked about and flip that to here's all the negative things, right? Corlin Baker's in the house. What's up, dude? Atlanta. Woo. We've had Atlanta, New Jersey. Let's call Atlanta like it's all of Georgia. Atlanta, New Jersey, Tennessee's in the house. My cousin Giuliano Scarfaliero, he's out in China. He's been dropping in every week recently, so I love that. But anyway, let's get back on to it. Championship mindset, folks. This is the mindset that's required for you to be able to move forward and step into your power. You're going to have some humility, and you got to have some honor. So let's break it down. Number one, they got an internal locus of control. We just talked about external. I'm going to remind you that if you are constantly looking for validation outside, you're going to struggle, right? But champions don't do that. They validate from within. Think about some of the best sports people you've ever known, right? Matter of fact, a really good example. I love telling this story all the time. Tyreek Hill is a wide receiver for the Miami Dolphins, right? And when he got traded by the Kansas City Chiefs to Miami. And I'm a Miami fan, by the way, so don't come at me firing away. But, well, I don't have my Miami hat in here. But anyway, when Tyreek Hill showed up, he was standing at the podium. I still remember this. And they asked him, they said, Tyreek, how are you going to handle the pressure out here with all the level of expectation that you bring to Miami, as well as you played in Kansas City? How are you going to handle all that pressure? And Tyreek, without skipping a beat, my man said, I don't know what you're talking about. I am that pressure. He said, I am the pressure. And then he suggested that you go listen to a specific song, which I'm not going to put on here because, yeah, it's a little rough, but I've listened to it, right? Well, I'll tell you, it's Push P. I was like, dang, listen to this. Anyway, that's the championship mindset. They have an internal locus of control. They understand where it's going to come from. If there's a problem that happens, they're the one that's going to handle it. This all the time people say, well, I don't have the confidence. Let me ask you something. Do you believe you are a problem solver? If you believe you're a problem solver, then is there really an issue that you'll never be able to get through? If you're resourceful enough. Absolutely. Internal locus of control. Number 2, focus on the advantages. The focus is on the advantages. They look at a situation, it's like, all right, we made this kind of progress. Here's the good side of what's going on. Right now, the real estate industry is all struggling, freaking out, and crazy because all the new things that's coming along. Meanwhile, there's a whole brood of agents that are kicking ass because of the situation. What's the advantage now? That's what we're looking for. If you have a championship mindset, that's what you're doing. That's what you're doing, ladies and gentlemen. You're focused on the advantages. Number 3, they're objective. They're not judgmental. They're objective. They're looking at the situation in its entirety. They're not just looking straight for the flaws and the problems. They're paying attention. They step out. They look at the picture, and then they give it an empowering meaning. Next one. They show grace. Now, this one you might think, well, being accountable and having a championship mindset is always about toughness, if you will. No, it's also about grace. Because there's moments that you need to give yourself grace, is there not? See, victims love to hold negativity and judgment and criticism, all that kind of stuff with people, and they hold it over somebody else all the time because they want to manipulate. Champions don't do that. They know how to give grace to themselves and to others. That one might mess up your head a little bit. We all could work on that one. Forgiveness is not a conversation of weakness. Forgiveness is not a situation of giving things away, right? Giving it away like it's no big deal. Forgiveness is a very powerful position. I'm going to remind you that vulnerableness, by the way, is as powerful as anything else. Next one. Champions accept gratitude or compliments. If you tell a champion, give them a compliment, they'll accept it. They'll say thank you. That's the honor side of accountability. The next one, they give praise where it's warranted. Don't you know these victims, man, they always like withholding, like they withhold compliments. They do that kind of thing because they think they're actually trying to hurt you. Champions don't do that. Champions actually share. They say, man, great job. Love what you're doing. And let me tell you why I love what you're doing. They get into it. Champions will always, it's that situation where game recognizes game, right? Are we being champions? Couple more to go here. They're much more direct and succinct with their communication. Where victims are they're telling stories and rationalizing, champions are going to be much more succinct and clear about their communication. We talked about this in the last 2 sessions we had on here on Spencer Uncensored. We talked about the clarity and the conciseness of people who are focused and people who are committed. It carries into accountability. They're not going to be vague in their speech. They're going to be very, very clean, concise, and direct. I didn't say mean. I said direct, meaning this is the situation. Because they the next one I have written down, they seek the truth. They're not looking for the story. They're looking for the truth. See, people who are champions, they want to know their numbers. They want to know the information. They want to understand what's going on. Why? So that they can get to the bottom of it and then turn it around and do something with it. I literally just had this conversation with a real estate agent yesterday, right? Are you tracking what you're doing? I haven't been tracking. I haven't done it. Get on it. Get on it. Because that's the only way. Champions want to know their numbers. You can't measure. Otherwise, you're going to tell yourself a story, and that story is not going to necessarily get you where you want to go. Champions know and understand the power of knowing the truth. And because of all this stuff, by the way, when a true champion, when you give them feedback and it's not what they want to hear, they own it. They don't just take it in and then come back at you. That's what a victim would do. A champion would look at it objectively, give themselves grace, clarify the outcome, make some decisions about where they want to go. They'll focus on the advantage of the situation and then move forward. Man, we've gone more than 15 minutes tonight, baby. Probably going to wrap up in the next 5 minutes, so hold on. We're almost done, ladies and gentlemen. Make sure you give me some likes and love. Tell everybody what you've been getting tonight. Feel free to share it all over the internet before we're done tonight, all right? Let's move it along. Champions are focused on the solution. Focus on the solution. I literally just said this to someone over the weekend. Look, you want to be the part of the problem or part of the solution? Your choice. So many people love to just stir up the shit. You want to be let's just stir up the pot. You want to be a part of the problem? Victim. Or do you want to be a part of the solution? Champions. Next one. Champions are authentic. They're typically way more transparent. It's kind of like, that what you see is what you get kind of thing. They don't do a real good job of being fake, right? Because champions don't have time for that stuff. Why don't they have time for that? Because the truth is a lot easier to remember than a lie, right? And so if you're always setting up a facade all the time, it's not going to get you the results you're really after, which is in fact the most important thing to a champion, the result. Oh, that was the last one because I also wrote down seeks the truth, and that was the last one I wrote down. And we've already covered that. Guys, I would love to hear from you guys. You could drop it in the comments. Let me know, hey, this is what I got out of this tonight. If you don't get the text messages from me from every morning, feel free to go over to spencercombs.com and do that. And then keep an eye, stay tuned. Momentum and Mastery, the book is coming out. And for those of you that are insiders here and that kind of keep up with what's going on, you can get a sneak peek at the cover because I put it in as like a little Easter egg on my banner over on Facebook. Yeah, look at the Facebook banner. You can see a little book in there. But anyway, if you guys need anything, feel free to reach out to me. I'm excited about what we got going on. We got webinars coming up. We've got master classes coming up. We got 2.5-day programs coming up. And those are what I'm really excited about because that's where the big transformations happen. If you need anything from me, reach out. It's been another episode of Spencer Uncensored. Y'all keep well, keep moving forward.